Yes, brothers, we won that case in Norway. It reminds us of King Solomon's words where he said that a good report is refreshing right down to the bone. And how can we forget the words of Isaiah? Isaiah tells us any weapon that is formed against us will fail. You see, brothers, this is how we know we are God's people. This is how we know we have the truth. And you know what else, brothers? We're going to get that money back. We're going to get that money back.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow. You know, a few years ago, that would have been me. As an elder standing on some Kingdom Hall platform at some assembly hall, explaining to the audience the reason we won the case in Norway is because of divine intervention. And in fact, tens of thousands of elders and circuit overseers and people from the branch office, they will be going out telling Jehovah's Witnesses the reason we won, divine intervention. As one person, when I was discussing this about this loss, they said it was like a gut punch, and it was. All of the evidence, all of the experiences, even the Watchtower's own printed material, their own published material was used, and yet the case was lost. So how did the Watchtower win this case in Norway? Well, as we've often said on Critical Thinkers, there are two very important things that a person needs to know about Jehovah's Witnesses. One, their teachings, and two, the culture. In fact, sometimes the culture is even more powerful and important than the teachings. You see, many Jehovah's Witnesses can't explain their teachings. How do y'all guys figure out 1914? Oh, it was 2000 and something. I'm not for sure, but I can bring somebody back to explain it to you. But culture, you see, the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses is enforced by the entire group on a person. And so by not knowing these two things about Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower will run and take full advantage over you. They will literally run over top of you. So what do they do in this particular case? Well, they did what they have done for so long. They reached back into their playbook and they pulled out what is known as Theocratic strategy. So now you may ask, well, what is Watchtower Theocratic strategy? Well, if you were to actually ask an attorney for the Watchtower or any witness who is on the stand, they would probably go straight into denial. I don't know. I never heard that. I don't know what that is. But they know exactly what it is. In fact, the best answer is to turn to the horse's mouth and let the Watchtower answer that question for us. Notice what they say it is. February 1st, 1956 Watchtower, page 86. It is proper to cover over our arrangements for the work that God commands us to do. If the wolfish foes draw wrong conclusions from our maneuvers to outwit them, no harm has been done to them by the harmless sheep, innocent in their motives as doves. Did you catch that? The Watchtower says it is proper for us to cover over our arrangements. And what was this arrangement we're talking about in the case of Norway? The arrangement is to cover over, to hide how judicial cases are actually done and how people are impacted. Yes, to use deceit, camouflage, misleading, misdirection when they're talking to the courts. That's what they can do. In other words, they got the license to lie. It's just that simple. Now, some Jehovah's Witnesses, they feel uncomfortable about lying on the stand. So what do? They write to the Watchtower Society. They write to the branch to find out, is this okay to do? Notice what the Watchtower, how they double down. June 1st, 1960 Watchtower. Question from readers. From time to time, letters are received asking whether a certain circumstance would justify making an exception to the Christian's obligation to tell the truth. There is one exception, however, that the Christian must ever bear in mind. As a soldier of Christ, he is in theocratic warfare. It is proper to hide the truth from God's enemies. So Jehovah's Witnesses are told, yes, you want to be honest, but there is one exception. where it's okay to lie. You see, if you're talking to God's enemies, then it's fine. Now, of course, that raises the question, well, who are God's enemies? Hence, who are the enemies of Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, the Watchtower has been very clear. In fact, as far back as 1937, J.F. Rutherford, he identified who the enemies are of Jehovah's Witnesses. And what do you think he called that book? That's right. You guessed it. He called it Enemies. And in this book, he laid out the three main enemies of Jehovah's Witnesses. All religions, any religious denomination is an enemy of Jehovah's Witnesses. 2, all governments, every single government on the face of this earth is an enemy to Jehovah's Witnesses. And 3rd, honorable mention, the apostates. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses now knew who they could lie to. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that when the Watchtower lawyers go into judicial cases in courtrooms, they let the court know, just want to let you guys know, we consider y'all guys an enemy, and we're going to invoke Theocratic strategy as we do this particular case? Do you think that will ever happen? Do you think you will ever see that? Of course not. But instead, what you will see is how the Watchtower will take something as important as the swearing-in process and make a mockery of it.
You just hold the Bible and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give in this royal commission.
That the evidence I shall give in this royal commission.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Take a seat.
5 minutes later.
And is there a manual or a document published by the governing body which sets that out, what its responsibilities are, what the branch's responsibilities are, and so on?
I'm unaware of any such document.
Do you really believe Toole, who is the Australian branch's highest legal official, he's a Bethel elder, and this man is claiming that he has never heard of, has no knowledge of, the branch organizational procedure book? What makes this so ironic is Stewart is standing there with a copy of the branch organization procedure book. Did he just sit there and lie?
Mr. Jackson, you need to be sworn.
Yes, Your Honour.
Do you have a Bible there?
I certainly do.
Would you take the Bible in your hand, please, and repeat after me? I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give in this royal commission.
That the evidence I shall give in this royal commission.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
5 minutes later.
Do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
Do you honestly believe that Jackson has forgotten all those talks he has given and all of those articles that he's approved of for the website, for the publications that repeats over and over that the governing body is the mouthpiece of God? Did he just lie? Folks, we can't make this stuff up. As they often say, sometimes facts are weirder than fiction. So this was the tactic that the Watchtower used in this case, as they use in many cases, the old theocratic strategy. But they also used another play, and that was, we're going to change our teachings. Now, can you imagine that? A religion that changes teachings of God just to come into compliance with a government. And that's what they did in this case here in Norway. But we've seen this play before, where they will change teachings of God. We've seen it with the case in Bulgaria, where they changed the blood. They told the government, we won't be disfellowshipping people anymore. And sure enough, the Jehovah's Witnesses do not disfellowship people for taking blood. But there was a little part that they left out. They didn't tell Bulgaria that the person was moved from a disfellowshipping status, removed, to now a disassociation status. And every Jehovah's Witness knows whether a person is removed or a person is disassociated, they are treated exactly the same. Here in the case of Norway, After the Watchtower lost that original case, what did they do? They went back to the drawing board and they came up with an interesting setup. We're going to tweak this just enough to see if we can get past this government. And at the same time, we'll keep all the real stuff in place. And that's what they did. You see, this was about human rights. So you have an American religion coming into a country and telling its citizens they can't even talk to their own mom. Well, they had to change it, and that's what they did. The Watchtower went back, and then they came up with this wonderful idea. Now you can say hello. You can speak to the person. And what did they do? They went running back to the Norwegian government saying, hey, look, we have contacted 9 million Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. And going forward, you can speak to your disfellowship removed family member. But of course, they didn't tell the Norwegian government the whole story. You see, for a non-Jehovah's Witness who's thinking to himself, oh, wow, the Jehovah's Witnesses have learned the error of their ways. They're thinking about all those experiences of families who haven't spoken to each other in 10, 20, 30 years. And now, just a matter of months, they now can speak to their family members again. But they left that little part out. You see, they're limited to about 12 words and only one subject. You see, the hello, and it's good to see you at the hall, and the hello, we'd like to invite you to the memorial. That is about the extent of the conversation in terms of where it can go. Can you imagine someone at the back of the Kingdom Hall after the meeting, after they spoke to this person when they first came in, and they're back there laughing and talking as if they're having a normal conversation? Can you imagine that? Well, you probably can't, because they won't be able to do that. They will not be able to sit back there like the people in Norway will be thinking. They're probably just talking to their family, making plans and ready to go out and do things together. No. And so that is why for so many Jehovah's Witnesses who've been disfellowship or quote unquote removed, it was an insult when their parents or their family and quote unquote friends called them up to say, I'm calling you to invite you to the Kingdom Hall or to the memorial. And then, of course, they asked that magic question. If they had not changed the rules, would you have called me? And of course, we know what the answer is. Now, as they say, we didn't win this case. And of course, we live to fight for another day. But there were some good things that came out of this particular case. The most important thing is awareness. More people are now aware of just how the Jehovah's Witnesses judicial process works. In fact, the Watchtower went so far as to change the terms that they use. It's no longer a judicial committee, it's just a committee. It's no longer disfellowshipping, it's removed. So it reminds you of Kentucky Fried Chicken, trying to soften that fried chicken word down. That's all the Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. They're simply trying to just tweak enough so they can get by. Something that you and I never did when we were growing up as Jehovah's Witnesses. We never compromised our faith. But the Watchtower has no problem. And it's kind of interesting because if you notice carefully, if you or I or Jehovah's Witness is being faced with an issue, you got to go through the fire. But every single time the Watchtower is on the hot seat, they will compromise in a minute. And the other thing that was good that came out of this particular case is how young people will be dealt with. At least they have to have the parents back there so that hopefully, the 3 elders won't turn out to be dirty old men as they ask all kinds of probing questions. One thing is for sure, the ex-Jehovah's Witness community will continue to provide people with information so that they can use critical thinking skills to determine what do I need to do when it comes to Jehovah's Witnesses.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.